New York was supposed to be Tariq St. Patrick's kingdom. Instead, it became the place where his story quietly broke apart. No gunshots, no headlines, no final goodbye, just silence. And in the Power universe, silence usually hides the darkest truth. So what really went wrong in New York? And why does Tariq act like that chapter never existed? New York is not just a city in Tariq's story. It is the foundation of everything he became. Every smart move, every mistake, every lie he told himself started there. When Power Legacy Season 1 begins, Tariq is already different. He is colder, quieter, and far more careful. What the show never explains is why that change feels so sudden. The answer is not in what we see on screen, but in what the story refuses to show us. When Tariq left New York, it did not feel like a win. There was no celebration, no sense of escape. It felt like retreat. In the Power world, characters do not leave their territory unless something forces them out. Tariq did not walk away because he wanted peace. He walked away because New York stopped being safe for him in ways that went deeper than street danger. His past was everywhere. His father's name still followed him. His enemies knew how he thought. And worse than that, his allies no longer trusted him. Trust was always Tariq's biggest weapon and also his biggest weakness. In New York, he learned how to use people, but he also learned how quickly people turn. Every deal came with a cost. Every favor came with strings over time. Those strings wrapped tighter around him. By the time Power Legacy begins, it feels like Tariq has already paid for mistakes we never saw him make. There is also guilt, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that changes how a man moves. Ghost's shadow never left New York. Every corner reminded Tariq of who his father was and what he became. New York was the place where Tariq proved he was not just Ghost's son, but it was also the place where he realized becoming Ghost might destroy him the same way. That fear does not disappear. It follows him. This is why New York feels like a missing chapter instead of a closed book. The city did not give Tariq closure. It gave him scars, and scars do not fade just because you change locations. They shape every decision that comes after. One of the biggest mistakes Tariq made in New York was believing he could control everything. He was young, smart, and confident, and for a while, that confidence paid off. He outplayed adults who underestimated him. He survived situations that should have ended him, but success made him reckless. He started believing he was untouchable. That belief always comes before a fall in the Power universe. At some point, Tariq's plans stopped being clean. Too many people knew too much. Too many secrets were shared with the wrong ears. When you build power too fast, cracks form underneath. New York is full of people who wait for those cracks. Tariq may have won battles, but he likely lost the war without realizing it. There is also the issue of loyalty. Tariq never truly belonged to one side. He moved between worlds, playing roles when it suited him. That made him dangerous. But it also made him unreliable. In New York, being smart is not enough. People need to believe you will stand with them when things get ugly. At some point, people stopped believing that about Tariq. That loss of faith is deadly. It turns protection into pressure. Friends into watchers, allies into future enemies. Tariq likely reached a moment where staying in New York meant fighting everyone at once. Not with guns, but with consequences, legal trouble, street retaliation, personal betrayal. The kind of danger that cannot be solved with intelligence alone. That's so when Tariq disappears from New York, it feels less like a choice and more like survival. He didn't leave because he was done. He left because New York was done with him. What makes Tariq's missing New York chapters so powerful is how it changed him emotionally. In Power Legacy Season 1, Tariq does not talk about the past. He does not explain himself. He does not open up. That silence is not confidence. It is damage control. People who have been burned deeply learn one thing very well. Say less. This version of Tariq listens more than he speaks. He watches people closely. He keeps his distance even when forming new alliances. These are not habits you build overnight. These are habits formed after betrayal. After realizing that even the smartest plan can fall apart when emotions get involved. New York taught Tariq that love is dangerous, that trust is expensive, that attachment creates weakness. Every relationship he lost or destroyed there taught him to keep people at arm's length. That is why he feels lonelier in Power Legacy. Even when surrounded by others, he is present, but never fully connected. There is also regret, not for what he did, but for what it cost him. New York took pieces of Tariq that never came back. His belief in control, his belief in fairness, his belief that intelligence alone could protect him. Power Legacy Tariq is not trying to build an empire anymore. He is trying to avoid another collapse. That is why the missing chapter matters so much. Without it, Tariq looks heartless. With it, he looks human. A young man shaped by loss, mistakes, and lessons learned the hard way. The truth is, New York is not finished with Tariq St. Patrick. Power does not forget its past. It waits. The silence around New York is not the end of the story. It is the setup. Every time Tariq avoids talking about it, the show is reminding us that something unresolved still exists. Power Legacy Season 1 is not about starting over. It is about carrying unfinished business into a new environment. Tariq did not escape his past. He brought it with him. The paranoia, the caution, the emotional walls. These are not personality traits. They are survival tools built from experience. Eventually, power always forces characters to face what they ran from. Old enemies return, secrets surface, choices demand payment. When that happens, New York will matter again, not as a place, but as a turning point that explains everything Tariq has become. This missing chapter is not a mistake in storytelling. It is a warning, because when power finally opens that door, it will not be gentle. It will remind Tariq and the audience that no legacy is built without consequences. And New York. That was where the bill first came due. What truly went wrong in New York was not one big mistake. It was a slow build of pressure that Tariq never fully respected. He believed intelligence could replace experience and strategy could replace loyalty in the power world. That belief is dangerous. New York is not a place where people forgive repeated missteps, especially from someone young who rises too fast. Tariq's biggest flaw was thinking that winning meant staying ahead. In reality, winning in New York means making people feel safe with you. And Tariq failed at that. As Tariq gained power, his circle became smaller, not because he wanted it that way, but because people started pulling back. Some were afraid of him, others were unsure if he would sacrifice them to save himself. Tariq had already shown that survival came first for him, no matter the cost. In New York, that kind of reputation spreads fast. Once people believe you will choose yourself over the group, they stop risking themselves for you. That silent shift is often more deadly than open betrayal. Another problem was that Tariq underestimated how much his name still mattered, no matter how hard he tried to step out of Ghost's shadow. New York never let him. Some people wanted to use him because of who his father was. Others wanted to destroy him for the same reason. Tariq was caught between legacy and expectation. Every move he made was judged more harshly than others. Any mistake was magnified over time. That pressure narrowed his options until leaving became the only move that didn't end badly. There's also the issue of emotional control. Tariq liked to believe he had mastered it, but New York exposed the cracks. Certain decisions were driven by pride, not logic. Certain risks were taken to prove a point, not because they were smart. Those moments may not have looked serious at first, but they added up. In power, small emotional choices often lead to large consequences later. By the time Tariq realized this, the damage was already done. New York also forced Tariq to confront something he hated admitting. He was becoming exactly what he once claimed to despise. The manipulation, the lies, the calculated harm, all of it mirrored Ghost more than Tariq wanted to accept. That realization creates conflict inside a person. It slows decision-making. It creates hesitation, and hesitation in New York is seen as weakness. People sense it, and they exploit it. At some point, Tariq reached a stage where staying meant escalation, more violence, more betrayal, more irreversible choices. Leaving New York was not about fear. It was about refusing to cross a line he knew he could never come back from. That decision may have saved his life, but it also cost him his sense of dominance. He didn't walk away undefeated. But he didn't walk away victorious either. This is why New York feels unfinished. Tariq didn't lose everything, but he lost enough to change him permanently. His confidence became caution. His ambition became restraint. His belief in control turned into constant calculation. These changes didn't happen overnight. They were shaped by everything New York took from him slowly, quietly, and without mercy. In Power Legacy Season 1, that weight is still visible. Every careful move, every delayed reaction, every moment where Tariq chooses silence instead of speech, those are not signs of growth alone. They are reminders of a city that taught him a painful lesson. Being smart is not the same as being secure, and power without trust will always. The most damaging thing New York did to Tariq was not taking his power, but changing how he felt inside. When someone survives long enough in a city like that, they stop thinking in terms of hope and start thinking in terms of protection. Tariq did not leave New York confident, he left guarded. That emotional shift explains more about Power Legacy Season 1 than any missing scene ever could. In New York, Tariq learned that every relationship comes with risk. People listened to him, but they also studied him. Every smile hid an angle. Every promise had an exit plan. Over time, Tariq stopped believing in clean loyalty. He started assuming that everyone would turn eventually. That belief becomes a wall. It keeps danger out, but it also keeps trust from getting in. By the time Power Legacy begins, Tariq speaks less, not because he has nothing to say, but because he has learned that words travel fast and can be used against you. This emotional distance did not come from one betrayal. It came from many small ones. Information shared too freely. Support that disappeared when things got hard. Allies who benefited from Tariq's moves but vanished when consequences arrived. Each moment taught him the same lesson. Closeness creates exposure. So he adapted. He became harder to read, harder to reach, harder to connect with. These are not traits of someone who feels safe. They are traits of someone who expects damage. New York also forced Tariq to confront isolation in a way he never had before. Being surrounded by people does not stop loneliness when none of them truly stand with you. That loneliness sharpens thinking but dulls empathy. Tariq began making decisions based on outcomes, not feelings. Who gets hurt mattered less than whether the plan worked. This emotional shift made him effective, but it also made him colder. Power Legacy Tariq is not cruel for no reason. He is efficient because New York taught him that hesitation invites loss. There is also the weight of regret. Tariq does not regret chasing power. He regrets believing he could control it without cost. New York took pieces of his innocence that he never gets back. Not innocence in terms of morality, but innocence in belief. He no longer believes effort guarantees results. He no longer believes intelligence guarantees safety. Those beliefs died quietly in New York. This is why Tariq avoids talking about the past, not because it makes him look weak, but because it reminds him of who he was before he understood the price of his choices. Silence becomes easier than explanation. Silence becomes a shield. In Power, characters who speak too much usually don't last long. Tariq learned that lesson the hard way. Power Legacy Season 1 shows a man who has already survived a collapse. That collapse happened off-screen, but its effects are everywhere. In his caution, in his controlled emotions, in the way he keeps people at a distance even when he needs them. New York didn't just test Tariq's intelligence. It tested his identity. What New York ultimately took from Tariq was his belief in control without consequence. And once that belief is gone, everything changes. Power becomes something you manage carefully, not something you chase freely. That is the real damage New York left behind. What New York left behind in Tariq's life was not just tension, but absence. People who once mattered simply stopped being part of his world. Some disappeared by choice, others by circumstance, and a few by consequences Tariq never fully talks about. In power, losing people does not always mean death. Sometimes it means separation so complete that it reshapes who you become. New York stripped Tariq of relationships in a quiet, permanent way. When Tariq was rising, connections were currency. He depended on people to move information, create opportunities, and protect his position. But as pressure increased, those same connections turned fragile, trust weakened, communication became careful. Familiar faces felt distant. The more Tariq tried to control situations, the more strained his relationships became. Eventually, the bonds that once held him up became weight pulling him down. Some relationships likely ended because Tariq outgrew them. Others ended because people no longer recognized the person he had become. Power changes how someone treats loyalty. What once felt mutual starts feeling one-sided. Tariq learned that. Not everyone wants to follow a leader who never slows down or explains himself. That kind of leadership creates results, but it also creates resentment. In New York, resentment does not stay quiet for long. There is also the possibility of deliberate distance at some point. Tariq may have chosen to cut people off before they could become liabilities. That choice is common in the power universe. Protect the mission by removing emotional attachments, but every cut leaves a mark. Over time, those marks add up. By the time power legacy begins, Tariq's circle is smaller, tighter, and colder. That is not growth alone. That is loss disguised as strategy. New York also taught Tariq that proximity invites danger. The closer someone is, the more they can hurt you. This belief does not come naturally. It is learned through experience, through moments where personal ties created problems instead of solutions. Tariq adapted by creating space, emotional space, strategic space, physical space. Leaving New York was the final step in that process. What makes this absence so powerful is how rarely it is addressed. Power often lets silence speak louder than dialogue. The missing people, the unspoken endings, the relationships that simply fade away all point to a chapter filled with choices that did not end cleanly. Tariq did not resolve everything. He abandoned what he could not fix. That abandonment follows him. In Power Legacy Season 1, Tariq struggles to fully commit to anyone, not because he does not need people, but because he knows how easily bonds can turn into leverage. New York taught him that closeness is expensive and distance is safer. This lesson keeps him alive, but it also keeps him alone. The real damage New York caused was not in what it destroyed openly, but in what it quietly removed from Tariq's life: support, stability, emotional grounding. These losses do not scream. They settle in slowly and reshape behavior over time. Tariq did not just leave people behind, he left versions of himself behind with them. This is why New York remains unfinished, not because the story lacks answers, but because the consequences are still playing out. Every guarded reaction, every calculated choice, every refusal to trust fully can be traced back to the people and connections New York took from him. The city did not just test Tariq's strength, it tested how much he was willing to lose to survive. By the time Tariq leaves New York behind, the city is no longer a place he wants to return to. It becomes something heavier than memory. New York turns into a wound that never fully heals. Every decision Tariq makes after that carries a quiet reminder of what the city took from him. He does not speak about it because speaking would mean reopening something he worked hard to seal shut. New York represents the moment Tariq realized power is not freedom. At first, power gave him options. Later, it took them away. The more influence he gained, the fewer exits he had. Every move required permission from consequences already set in motion. That realization changes how a person views ambition. In Power Legacy Season 1, Tariq is not chasing dominance the way he once did. He is chasing control without exposure. That shift begins in New York. The city also becomes a symbol of limits. Tariq learned that intelligence has boundaries. No matter how far ahead he planned, there were forces larger than him. Systems, histories, names. Ghost's legacy was never something Tariq could outrun while staying in New York. Every street carried history. Every deal carried expectation. Leaving was the only way to reduce that pressure, not eliminate it. What makes New York a wound instead of a home is the lack of closure. There was no final victory, no clear defeat, just a slow understanding that staying would lead to something worse. When a chapter ends without resolution, it stays active in the mind. It affects confidence, it affects trust, it affects how risks are measured. Tariq carries New York with him in this way. Not as nostalgia, but as caution. This explains why Tariq moves differently in Power Legacy. He tests people before trusting them. He watches patterns instead of reacting emotionally. He avoids building routes too fast. These behaviors are not signs of weakness. They are learned responses to an environment that punished mistakes without mercy. New York trained him to expect consequences even when things seem calm. There is also fear buried under that caution. Not fear of death, but fear of repetition. Fear of becoming trapped again by circumstances he created himself. Fear of becoming so powerful that escape becomes impossible. This fear keeps Tariq disciplined. It also keeps him distant. He does not allow himself to feel too comfortable because comfort is what New York took advantage of. New York did not just shape Tariq's strategy. It shaped his identity. It taught him that survival sometimes means leaving parts of yourself behind. The ambition he once wore openly is now hidden behind calculation. The confidence that once pushed him forward is now filtered through restraint. These changes are not accidental. They are the result of lessons learned in a city that demands payment for every step up. This is why New York remains present even when it is absent. The city lives in Tariq's pauses, his silence, his careful choices. It is not a place he misses, it is a reminder he carries. And until that wound is truly confronted, it will continue to guide him, protect him, and limit him all at the same time.